In the late 16th century, Europe was a continent fractured by faith and fierce ambition. Spain, under the devout Catholic King Philip II, stood as the preeminent global power, its empire vast and its coffers filled with New World gold. Across the narrow English Channel, Queen Elizabeth I presided over a Protestant nation, a smaller kingdom yet one fiercely independent and increasingly bold in its defiance. This ideological and political chasm created an inescapable tension, a slow-burning fuse that would ignite one of history's most ambitious, and ultimately disastrous, naval campaigns. For King Philip II, the Protestant reign of Elizabeth I was not merely a political inconvenience, it was a blasphemy and a direct threat to the spiritual soul of Europe. He envisioned a unified Catholic continent, an objective championed by the Pope himself. England, with its burgeoning naval power and its privateers like Sir Francis Drake constantly raiding Spanish treasure ships, was a persistent thorn in his side. To Philip, an invasion was not just a military option, it was a divine crusade, a great enterprise ordained by God to restore rightful faith and order. Queen Elizabeth I, the daughter of Henry VIII, had navigated a treacherous path to the throne. Her reign was marked by plots, religious unrest, and the constant threat of foreign intervention. She had firmly established Protestantism in England, drawing the ire of Catholic powers. Elizabeth was a shrewd ruler, known for her political dexterity and her ability to inspire loyalty. She understood that England's survival depended on its ability to defend its shores and project power through its rapidly developing navy. Her defiance of Philip was both a matter of faith and national sovereignty. Philip's strategy was complex, ambitious, and fraught with logistical challenges. The core of the plan involved a massive naval fleet, the Armada, sailing from Spain, securing control of the English Channel, and then linking up with a seasoned Spanish army of 30,000 men. This army, commanded by the Duke of Parma, was stationed in the Spanish Netherlands. Once united, this formidable land force would cross the Channel in barges, land on English soil, and march on London. It was a strategy dependent on precise timing, perfect coordination, and absolute naval superiority. The sheer scale of the Spanish Armada was unprecedented in its time. Across Spain and its empire, ships were requisitioned, cannons cast, and provisions stockpiled. Galleons, carracks, and smaller vessels were gathered from every port, forming a fleet that dwarfed anything seen before. The task of equipping and manning this colossal force was immense, requiring countless artisans, soldiers, and sailors. This was not merely a military endeavor, it was a national mobilization, a testament to Spain's vast resources and Philip's unshakable resolve to bring England to heel. Philip's initial choice for the Armada's commander, the highly experienced Álvaro de Bazan, tragically died. In his place, Philip appointed Alonso Pérez de Guzmán, the 7th Duke of Medina Sidonia, a nobleman with vast administrative experience but no significant naval command. Medina Sidonia was acutely aware of his inexperience at sea and openly expressed his doubts to the king, citing his lack of knowledge regarding naval warfare and even suffering from seasickness. Yet, Philip's will was absolute. The Duke, loyal to his sovereign, reluctantly accepted the monumental, daunting task. The Spanish naval doctrine was rooted in a tradition of land warfare. Their large, heavily armed galleons were designed to act as floating fortresses, carrying vast numbers of soldiers. The primary tactic was to close with enemy ships, grapple, and board them, allowing the superior Spanish infantry to overwhelm the opposing crew. This strategy had proven effective in many campaigns. However, it placed less emphasis on long-range gunnery and maneuverability, a factor that would prove critical when facing the more agile and aggressively armed English fleet in the narrow confines of the Channel. England's navy, while smaller, was fundamentally different. English shipbuilders had developed faster, more maneuverable ships, designed for speed and long-range cannon fire rather than boarding. These race-built galleons were lower in the water, carried heavier guns on their broadsides, and were crewed by experienced mariners who saw their ships as weapons platforms. Commanders like Sir Francis Drake, Sir John Hawkins, and Lord Howard of Effingham were not just nobles, they were seasoned sailors, privateers, and innovators who understood the power of naval artillery and tactical maneuvering. A year before the Armada was set to sail, Sir Francis Drake launched an audacious preemptive strike. In April 1587, with a small fleet of English ships, he sailed directly into Cadiz harbour, one of Spain's most vital naval bases. In a daring raid, he destroyed numerous Spanish ships, supplies, and provisions that were part of the Armada's preparations. This audacious act, famously dubbed singeing the King of Spain's beard, significantly delayed the Armada's departure and gave England crucial additional time to prepare its defences. It also sent a clear message of English resolve. Finally, after months of delays and immense effort, the great enterprise was ready. In late May 1588, the Spanish Armada, a truly awe-inspiring sight, sailed from Lisbon. It consisted of 130 ships, carrying nearly 30,000 men and 2,500 cannons. Its sheer size and power seemed to confirm its invincible moniker. Medina Sidonia's orders were clear: avoid engagement with the English fleet, sail swiftly to the English Channel, and there rendezvous with the Duke of Parma's army. The fate of two kingdoms, and perhaps the religious future of Europe, now rested on the capabilities of this vast fleet. The journey, however, began with an ominous sign. Just days out of Lisbon, a severe storm struck the massive fleet, scattering ships and causing significant damage. Several vessels were forced to turn back, and the entire Armada had to seek shelter and undertake repairs in the port of Corunna, in northwestern Spain. This unexpected delay was costly, consuming precious supplies and demoralizing the already seasick crews. It provided England with even more time for final preparations and highlighted the inherent fragility of such a vast undertaking against the unpredictable might of the Atlantic. 3 weeks later, in late July 1588, the refitted Armada once again set sail. As they approached the English Channel, their formidable crescent-shaped formation was finally spotted by English lookout ships near the Lizard in Cornwall. News spread like wildfire across England, relayed by a chain of beacon fires lit along the coastline, signalling the imminent threat. Lord Howard, commander of the English fleet, was at Plymouth, and upon hearing the news, bravely sailed his ships out of the harbour, choosing to engage the Armada at sea rather than wait for them to reach the Channel's narrowest points. On July 31st, the first skirmishes began. The English, under Howard and Drake, employed their superior speed and maneuverability. They avoided close-quarter fighting, instead circling the Spanish formation and unleashing volleys of cannon fire from a safe distance. The Spanish, adhering to their boarding tactics, found themselves frustrated. Their heavily armed galleons were difficult to turn, and their cannons, designed for shorter ranges, struggled to hit the agile English ships. While no decisive victory was achieved, the English had established a tactical advantage, chipping away at the Armada's formidable aura. For several days, the two fleets engaged in a running battle up the English Channel. The Armada maintained its disciplined crescent formation, largely impervious to the long-range English attacks, but unable to strike back effectively. Medina Sidonia diligently followed his orders, pressing eastward towards the intended rendezvous with Parma. The English, despite their tactical successes, were also facing challenges. Their ammunition supplies were dwindling, and their ships, though faster, were not strong enough to break the Spanish formation decisively. It was a war of attrition, slowly moving towards a pivotal point. While Medina Sidonia pushed through the Channel, the Duke of Parma faced his own insurmountable obstacles in the Spanish Netherlands. His army of 30,000 veteran soldiers was ready, but their shallow draft barges were vulnerable and required the Armada's protection to cross the Channel. However, the Dutch sea beggars, fiercely independent Protestant rebels, had blockaded the coastal ports. Parma's barges were trapped, pinned down by the Dutch fleet and unable to reach the open sea. This critical breakdown in communication and coordination rendered half of Philip's grand plan impossible to execute. By August 6, Medina Sidonia's Armada reached Calais Roads, a narrow anchorage off the French coast. He dropped anchor, awaiting word from Parma and hoping for a chance to resupply and reorganize. This decision, however, placed the mighty Spanish fleet in a precarious position. Packed tightly together in a shallow roadstead, they were vulnerable to attack. The English fleet, though low on shot, shadowed them closely, recognizing the golden opportunity this exposed position presented. The stage was set for the decisive engagement that would define the fate of the invasion. Lord Howard and Sir Francis Drake quickly conceived a daring plan to exploit the Armada's vulnerability. They decided to use fire ships, old, expendable vessels filled with highly flammable materials, set alight, and then sent drifting downwind into the tightly packed Spanish fleet. The goal was not necessarily to destroy ships directly, but to sow panic, break the Armada's disciplined formation, and force them out into the open sea, where the English fleet could engage them on more favorable terms. It was a psychological weapon as much as a physical one, relying on surprise and fear. Just after midnight on August 8, 8 English fire ships, their hulls ablaze, were unleashed towards the anchored Spanish Armada. The terrifying sight of the flaming vessels, combined with the real danger of explosion, sent shockwaves through the Spanish fleet. Panic erupted. Commanders, fearing their ships would be engulfed, ordered their crews to cut their anchors and flee into the darkness. In a desperate attempt to escape the inferno, the once orderly crescent formation dissolved into chaos, with ships scattering in every direction, losing their strategic cohesion and their position. As dawn broke on August 8, the full extent of the fire ship attack's success became tragically clear to Medina Sidonia. His once impenetrable formation was shattered. Many ships had drifted eastward, battered by the wind and tide, finding themselves perilously close to the sandbanks of the Flanders coast. The English fleet, seizing this crucial moment, converged on the now exposed and disordered Spanish vessels. This was the opportunity they had been waiting for, to engage the Armada not as an organized fortress, but as isolated, vulnerable targets. The Battle of Grave Lines had begun. The Battle of Grave Lines was a brutal, 8-hour engagement. The English ships, faster and more nimble, repeatedly closed in on the Spanish, unleashing devastating broadsides from their powerful cannons. They maintained their distance, preventing the Spanish from enacting their preferred boarding tactics. The Spanish fought with immense courage, but their unwieldy galleons and slower rate of fire put them at a severe disadvantage. Many Spanish ships were heavily damaged, their hulls splintered, and countless men fell to the relentless English bombardment. It was a technological and tactical mismatch. Despite the overwhelming English assault, the Spanish fought with remarkable resilience. Medina Sidonia worked tirelessly to restore some semblance of order, rallying his remaining ships. While no Spanish ships were sunk outright by English cannon fire during the battle, many were severely crippled, becoming waterlogged hulks, barely able to stay afloat. The Spanish steadfastly refused to surrender, their determination a testament to their faith and loyalty. Yet, the strategic objective was lost, the rendezvous with Parma was now an impossibility. The Armada was pushed relentlessly eastward, away from its goal. With their formation broken, their ships damaged, and no prospect of linking with Parma's army, Medina Sidonia had no choice but to order a full retreat. The wind and tide pushed the Armada away from the English Channel, into the treacherous waters of the North Sea. The only viable route back to Spain was to sail northward around Scotland and then down the west coast of Ireland. It was a desperate, perilous journey into unknown and unforgiving seas, a path far from any friendly ports, and a testament to the comprehensive failure of the initial invasion strategy. As the shattered Armada rounded the northern tip of Scotland, they encountered the true fury of the North Atlantic. A series of ferocious storms, dubbed the Protestant Wind by the English, battered the already damaged Spanish ships. These were not mere squalls, but violent gales that tore sails, snapped masts, and drove ships onto deadly rocks. For the Spanish sailors, exhausted, malnourished, and demoralized, these storms were a catastrophic blow, far more destructive than any English cannon. The natural elements completed the work the English fleet had begun. The coastline of Ireland proved to be a graveyard for many of the Armada's ships. Driven by the relentless storms and unable to navigate the unfamiliar, rugged shores, dozens of galleons and smaller vessels were smashed against the rocks. Thousands of Spanish sailors and soldiers, having survived battle, now perished in the frigid, turbulent waters or washed ashore only to face hostile locals and English garrisons. Reports from the time speak of beaches littered with bodies and wreckage, a testament to the immense human cost of this ill-fated expedition. Beyond the battles and the storms, another silent enemy ravaged the Armada: disease and starvation. The long delays, overcrowded conditions, and lack of fresh provisions meant that many men were already weakened before the main engagement. Dysentery, typhus, and scurvy spread rapidly through the cramped ships. By the time the fleet limped back toward Spain, thousands had succumbed not to battle wounds, but to illness and hunger. The journey around Ireland was a brutal test of endurance that few passed, decimating the once mighty fighting force from within. Months after setting sail, a mere fraction of the original Armada ships and men slowly, painfully, returned to Spanish ports. The flagship of Medina Sidonia, the San Martin, was among them, heavily damaged but still afloat. The sight of these returning vessels, broken and depleted, was a stark contrast to the triumphant departure. The scale of the disaster was immense, a profound blow to Spanish pride and resources. While Philip II would order new fleets, the psychological impact of that invincible Armada's defeat was a wound that would linger for decades. Upon learning of the catastrophe, King Philip II's reaction was remarkably stoic. He famously declared, "I sent my ships to fight against men, not against the seas." His unwavering faith led him to believe that the defeat was an act of God, a divine test rather than a sign of divine disapproval. He immediately set about commissioning new ships, rebuilding his navy with characteristic determination. While the immediate objective of invading England had failed, Philip's ambition remained, and Spain's power, though dented, was far from broken. The war would continue for many more years. In contrast, Queen Elizabeth I's victory was seen as nothing less than miraculous, a direct intervention by God in favor of Protestant England. At Tilbury, she famously rallied her troops, declaring, "I know I have the body but of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." This resounding triumph solidified her rule, boosted national morale, and cemented England's image as a rising naval power, capable of defending its shores against any foe. The defeat of the Armada became a cornerstone of English national identity. The disaster of the Spanish Armada did not instantly end Spain's dominance, but it marked a significant turning point. It exposed the limitations of Spain's traditional naval doctrine and highlighted the superiority of the English race-built galleons and their innovative tactics. While Spain still possessed a powerful fleet, the myth of its invincibility was shattered. England, by contrast, gained immense confidence and prestige on the world stage, accelerating its development as a major maritime power and laying the foundations for its future global empire. It's impossible to discuss the Armada's defeat without acknowledging the profound role of the weather. While English tactical prowess at Gravelines was undeniable, it was the ferocious storms around Scotland and Ireland that inflicted the heaviest losses. The Protestant wind became a powerful symbol, perceived by the English as divine intervention. For the Spanish, it was a cruel twist of fate, an insurmountable force that compounded their strategic blunders and technological disadvantages. The sea itself proved to be the most formidable, and ultimately decisive, adversary. The Spanish Armada disaster of 1588 resonated through the centuries. For Spain, it was a costly lesson in naval warfare and logistics, though they would continue to be a dominant force for decades. For England, it was a national epic, a defining moment that forged a sense of unity and destiny. The defeat did not end the Anglo-Spanish War, which continued until 1604, but it irrevocably altered the geopolitical landscape. It cemented England's independence, its Protestant identity, and its burgeoning naval power, paving the way for its future as a global empire. Beyond the strategic implications, the Armada campaign carried a devastating human cost. Tens of thousands of Spanish and English lives were lost, primarily from disease, starvation, and the unforgiving sea. The dreams of empire, religious unification, and national glory often come at an unimaginable price in human suffering. The shattered hulls of the Armada's ships and the bleached bones on Ireland's shores served as grim reminders of Philip II's great enterprise, an ambition that sailed forth with such hope and returned in such despair, a stark testament to the unforgiving nature of history and the sea.